right, I'm Chris Cuomo. Today was the key day of the Trump trial. Michael Cohen was left last. Now, the question is, was he left last because he was the best for last or because he was the trickiest for the prosecution? Today was about explaining to this jury how to value his testimony. That's what cross-examination is about. It's one of two devices. One is to show that the testimony is incorrect, okay? That's one reason you cross, to show that somebody's reckoning of facts, of circumstances, of understanding is off. The other thing that you use it for is to say, even if this person is telling you the truth, or the facts are right, you can't believe them. Why? Because that's reasonable doubt. Is there a story that could be true, that makes as much sense as this guy's story? That was the test of the day. Did Michael Cohen pass it? Could one juror feel another way? Well, look, but remember, this is not just about the facts and the law, okay? Saying that this Trump trial is not helpful to progress in this country is not tantamount to my saying that Trump is above the law. We have to learn to hold two ideas in our heads at the same time. We keep making the same mistakes in this country. And I believe they're not really mistakes anymore. I believe it's all out of convenience. I believe the division is manufactured. I believe it's done for advantage. I believe people know this. I believe they know that on social media they'll get paid by stoking the flames and seeing anything that's different and anyone who disagrees as some kind of demon. But you need to see it. And that's also what this trial is about. It doesn't mean that Trump's not above the law. He has to go down too. People need to understand prosecutors do not bring every case, even if they think there is evidence of a crime. Not every time. No, they do not. It is called prosecutorial discretion. And what is the precursor of that? It's called the interest of justice. What policy does this case pursue? What does this mean to our society? Is this where our time and our resources are best spent? These things have to matter, okay? It doesn't mean that Trump didn't do what he's charged with doing. In all likelihood, he did. My interest is in seeing this country get away from this toxic division. And you can't say this trial helps. And look, it may tickle you. You may like to see him squirming and having the judge threaten him with this and Cohen saying all this stuff. Good, I'm glad. Good for you. Good for you. That doesn't mean it's good for the country. This trial certainly doesn't serve the cause of unity. In fact, you got all the proxies outside with the same ties. It's like, brother, you want to distinguish yourself and try to be the VP. You got to look a little different than the rest of them. I mean, they look like a bunch of suits for a corporation, these guys, except for Ramaswamy. Now, that's okay. I'm not going to have the conversation tonight about whether Trump is violating the gag order by proxy. The best thing that could happen for Donald Trump would be for them to put him in jail for contempt of court. It would make him the victim he wants to be. If you want to analyze what today meant, you can't lose sight of what it means for the country. Michael Cohen is getting treated differently based on which politics are reflected in the coverage, okay? He's now the darling of MSNBC, the prosecution's star witness. Oh, that's what Michael Cohen is? He's a star of any kind? Please. He's a darling of the left because he goes bad on Trump, and they like it. He was crossed on the stand to show something that's really interesting. I believe it is the only avenue of exclusion on this case for Trump. Can they convince one juror, because that's how you hang, right? You hang the jury. You don't acquit, but you don't convict. And the idea of bringing this again, look, you got to remember, federal prosecutors looked at this case and passed on it, okay? They're not generous of spirit, okay? That's not how they do their job. Why did they pass? Because it didn't seem like it was worth it from a policy perspective for them. It didn't check all the boxes. So if they can get one juror to think, I think Trump knew that he was paying these women off. I think he did this often. I think he knew what Cohen was doing, but he may not have known how he was doing it. But his signatures on all the things. Yeah, but he just signed whatever they put in front of him. The crime here is not paying off the women. I keep hearing people say that. I keep hearing it in the media. That's not the crime. It's the money that was used. That's the crime. The crime is that you used campaign money to pay off the women because you were trying to quiet the campaign, and that became a type of in-kind contribution, the efforts of Cohen, remunerated, paid back later on, and that wound up being a campaign finance violation. Why? Because you didn't disclose it. But what if Trump didn't know about this fakakta scheme that Cohen came up with to get paid back with the LLC and the HELOC and the this and the that? What's the proof of that? The audio that I got when I was at CNN that broke this case wide open, frankly, I'm not patting myself on the back. It was the team that got it done. He says, what financing? Cash. We'll pay cash. That's what Trump said. Cohen says, no. I'll take care of it. Does one juror believe that that means he didn't know about that? We'll put it to the better minds. But the jury has absolutely now likely heard what it needs to determine if Trump was aware and intended to skirt campaign laws and how he paid off these two women. I told you what I know to be true about Michael Cohen's story of what he did for and with Trump. Today, the defense got their chance to try and take him down. And I want to bring in the better minds now and go over what the high points were. As always, I'm going to start with Mark Garagos. We have the venerable defense counsel, a friend of show. And we have, I hope, Gene Rossi. Is he there? Oh, look at that. Look at that. Let me tell you, Gene, I've never been happier to see a face in a long time. Former assistant U.S. attorney. We weren't sure we were going to get Gene. And I was like, oh, man, if I have to go against Garagos, this is going to get ugly early. All right. So first, to the panel, does anybody take objection to anything I said before I came to you?
Yes.
All right. What's your problem, Rossi?
Let me give you some history.
Crooked. Nobody cares. Go ahead.
That's okay. The Trump Justice Department prosecuted Michael Cohen. The Trump Justice Department killed the case before Merrick Garland took office in the spring of 2021. So when you say that they decided not to prosecute the case, that's not 100% accurate. Bill Barr, who was a lapdog for Donald Trump, killed this case. The second thing
hold on, Rossi. Nobody's going to argue that you're not stronger than I am, of course. That's why I have you on the show. You're one of the better minds. But let's just keep it simple for the mouth breathers like me, all right? Did they look at the case? The answer is yes. Did they decide to prosecute the case? The answer is no. You are ascribing motivation for why they did not prosecute the case. So what I said is accurate. You're just saying you don't like it. Mark Garagos, who's right, me or the other Italian?
Well, the Armenian tiebreaker here is, in one way, you're both right. What Rossi says is true, and there's people who can make that claim. But I was going to tell you, Chris, this was one of the few monologues that you went through that I was agreeing with you the entire time, and I was starting to doubt myself.
Must be the fever.
Because of that. It was shocking to me. And I'll tell you, the one thing that I'd love to hear Gene weigh in on is, if you accept what Gene said is accurate, it is accurate, then why did the current SDNY wait until the last minute to give the DA's office all of the discovery specifically related to Michael Cohen? Because that was kind of a last-minute problem, if you will, for the prosecution, and it gave the defense something to argue. So that would seem to undercut the idea that there's a politicalization of the Justice Department.
Chris, I got to respond here.
Please.
I represented Keith Davidson. We all know who Keith Davidson was.
Keith Davidson is the lawyer who cut the deal for Stormy Daniels. He was the one working directly with Cohen.
Okay. When the Southern District Trump Justice Department,
he's been in my office multiple times representing clients who were coming after my clients. I know him well.
But Chris, my punchline for Mark, and good to see you, Mark. Maybe we'll have lunch someday. But I met with the prosecutors. There were 4 of them. They were Justice Department folks, Southern District, brilliant, under Trump. And I can tell you categorically that they would have come within this much of prosecuting Donald Trump if they got the okay. The evidence against Donald Trump, based on my experience in the proffers and meetings with the prosecutors and my client, Keith Davidson, against Mr. Trump was overwhelming. So to say that they didn't think they had a case against Donald Trump, that's not accurate.
They didn't bring one. Mark Garagos, do you believe that today what we saw with Michael Cohen was, here, let's do the main question. He was left last because best for last, or he was left last because he's the most mixed bag for the jury?
He's clear. Look, there's nobody who's going to say, and if they do, I would check I check their sanity. No juror is going to come out after this case, whether it's hung, whether it's a guilty, and by the way, those are the only 2 things that are going to happen, and say, oh, you know what, I was ready to acquit, and then Michael Cohen saved the day. That's just not going to happen. The prosecutors know what they had. They figured we're going to save him for last, and they're going to say in closing argument some variation on a theme that they teach you at Prosecutorial 101 school, which is, we don't pick our witnesses. We get who we've got. When you lay down with dogs, you wake up with fleas, blah, blah, blah. The usual litany of things that they say. And that the reason they say that is they know that he's got problems. The bigger question I've got is not being in the courtroom and having to get the cross-examination
should have been on camera
through people who were.
Should have been on camera.
It should have been on camera. I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Rossi, first of all, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you elevating the game. I appreciate you giving us the insight. And I appreciate you for answering a question I had. And I have to be honest with you and with the audience, and you can teach us both at the same time. I know what you're telling me is right, but I don't understand it 100%. You say that the answer to my question is, hey, maybe Trump knows what he did. We heard it on the audio tape, but he may not have known about how it was going to be financed, and Cohen was going to make it a campaign contribution. He may not have known. You say, oh, yeah, he did. And they were well aware of this, these guys, Cohen and Trump, and we know it from a footnote in the earlier prosecution of Michael Cohen. So explain to the audience what they had reason to already be aware of and violated it.
Chris, you get tonight's chicken dinner. In the sentencing memo filed by the federal prosecutors in the Michael Cohen case in December of 2018, I tell your listeners, viewers, go to footnote 11. In 2013, the Federal Election Commission investigated a violation of the in-kind rules and regulations by Michael Cohen / Donald Trump, because Mr. Trump was thinking about running for president. And in 2011 or 2012, Cohen paid in kind for either a poll and or some online website. And the FEC was investigating that. And at the end, they decided just give him a slap on the wrist and not take any action. My point is this: Donald Trump and Michael Cohen were well aware of the requirements for complying with the in-kind contribution limits. And here's the coup de grace, Chris and Mark. In his FEC filing in 2017, Donald Trump admitted on an amended filing that this was an in-kind contribution, the $130,000. So the argument that Donald Trump was Sergeant Schultz, didn't know he was violating the law, that dog won't hunt.
Mark?
Well, Gene, I'll agree with you here. It won't hunt in Manhattan State Supreme Court. I will tell you, if this case were in a different venue and I could give you 100 of them, this case never would have been brought, and this case never would have ended in a conviction.
Gene, do you think he gets convicted?
I think if the closing argument by the prosecutor is good, and it's not matched by Todd Blanche or anybody else who does their closing, I think there's a fair chance of a conviction on some of the counts. Yes.
What can he say, Mark, in closing as defense counsel, other than, I know you people are biased in the jury box, which wouldn't be the best thing for him to put out there. What do you think he could say? What's the best message from the defense?
Look, I will tell you, maybe I'm jaded or a cynic, but I've done hundreds of jury trials. The dirty little secret of jury trials is closing arguments do not persuade anybody one way or another. Basically, a jury is 12 people, and there are usually ones who are stronger than the others. So you are speaking at your closing to the ones who you believe are going to drive the case your way, or in this case, you believe there's going to be a hung jury. You are arming the 1 or 2 or 3 people that you think are going to hang this jury with the arguments that they are going to use to stand tall in that jury room. That's all you're going to be able to do, because those jurors, I hate to say it, because it counters the jury instructions. The jurors have already made up their minds. They're just looking at this through a prism of whether they are, whether they're a big firm lawyer, whether they're somebody who thinks Donald Trump belongs behind bars. And that's the reality of it. And nobody is going to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt one way or another by the closing.
I got to tell you, this was a very edifying and satisfying conversation for me. Mark Garagos, thank you very much. Gene Rossi, welcome to the show. Thank you for the information and the insight. Appreciate it very much. 4 minutes, 5 seconds. Coming up, the Times released polls. Trump is continuing to strengthen in swing states, specifically with working class voters. Now, I don't really love that term because I don't believe that we really have classes anymore. There's very rich, and then there's everybody else, and then there's people at the bottom who can't get anybody to pay attention to. Bill O'Reilly is here. He says he knows what's going on there and what Biden's problems are. Now, can those problems be fixed? We'll hear from the big man next. So the New York Times put out polling that is about the key states. Look, these are snapshots of a moment in time at best, all right? We're not huge fans of polls here. I much prefer focus groups, regionally specifics in particular. But the trend is that Trump is maintaining despite any bad things that happen, and he is growing in particular with working families, which is an interesting demographic set in most of these polls. You look at what's called the crosstabs, if you want to be geeky about this, and I'm sure O'Reilly is going to beat me up. Nobody cares, Cuomo. But if you look, the more people are gas and grocery sensitive, the more Biden resistant they are, which is why Biden had to make that shift towards the left flank of his party by calling for the pause in Israel and being so quiet about what was happening on campus. It is also, however, why he also had to have Democrats put out word that they're going to give $1 billion in military aid additionally to Israel, because he needs to shore up the middle of that party as well. Let's bring in Bill O'Reilly. It's good to see you on a Tuesday. Makes me feel like the week is farther along than it actually is, but it's always a pleasure. What do you believe the relevance is?
Well, first of all, let me run down a few things, and we'll get to relevance. Number one, on the Trump trial, Anthony Scaramucci appeared on Leland Vittert right before you came on the air. Did you happen to see that interview?
In its entirety.
Okay. So Scaramucci, who is a Trump hater, could not define the crime. He misstated what the crime that Trump is charged with. And Leland corrected him, pointing that out. I thought that was pretty impressive. A guy like Scaramucci, who's got skin in the game, he wants Trump to be humiliated and convicted, doesn't know what the crime is, then a lot of the jury people don't know either. I don't know what the crime is. Is it campaign funding? Is it business stuff like the real estate thing? Nobody knows. So that's a big thing. in this whole trial, because I believe there are one or two human beings on that jury that are so disgusted with this that they're going to vote to acquit Trump, and it'll be a hung jury. That's what I think will happen, but I could be wrong. Your monologue at the top of the program, I disagree only with one thing. You said overall this is not a plus for the country, and you couldn't find anything that was positive. I'll tell you two things that are positive about this trial. Number one, it is beyond any reasonable doubt that the justice system has fallen apart in New York City and state. It doesn't exist anymore.
How's that a
positive? We
don't
have justice here in New York. It's a positive because people know it. They now realize it. Whereas before there was a debate about it. There's no debate. Where you and I live, there is no justice, criminal or civil. If you get into that court system, you're going to get hammered, whether you're a victim, whether you're being sued or suing, whatever it may be. It is a catastrophe. That's number one. Number two, there is now no doubt at all, and you pointed this out, that the corporate news media does not report anything honestly anymore. They take sides to preach to their choir because that's where they make their money. Okay? And there is no reasonable doubt about that statement. That's what they do, both left and right. Okay? So forget about the news media giving you honest coverage. You're not going to get it. And I think NewsNation is an exception to that, but I've said that before. Now, let's go into Biden and the polling. It's not so much that the Trump trial has helped Donald Trump. That's what all of these commentators say. The same people who say at the end of the day 87 times. These are the same people who then say, oh, the Trump trial is helping Trump. Not necessarily. All right? What is helping Trump is Biden. He's a blanking disaster. Now, if I were Robert De Niro, I would have used the word, okay? But I'm not. And I wouldn't lower myself to use that word. But he's a disaster. Now I'm going to give you some facts. You got a pen and paper there, Cuomo, on your desk, on your little desk?
Yeah.
You got the pen and paper?
Yes.
I want you to copy this down. Let's
see what you say first.
Okay. This is under Joe Biden. Home prices in America up 47%. Home price medium record, $421,000.
So people have more equity in their homes.
Working people.
That's good.
Well, yeah, but working people can't get in the game. Okay?
Unless
so
they
home
already
prices
own
up
homes.
47%. Gross. Try not to interrupt. Let me get these stats out. Then you can hammer me.
I'm not going to hammer you. Go ahead,
Grocery
Captain
store
Dramatic.
prices.
Go ahead. Yes.
25% up. Mm-hmm. Grocery store, 25% up. Gas, 50% up. Home insurance prices. If you got the $420,000 median price home, you got to have insurance. Up 65% under Biden. Auto insurance, up 52% under Biden. Just those stats
very bad.
Disqualify Biden from re-election. That's all Trump should be talking about. All right? Trump cannot keep himself out of the land of crazy. He loves the land of crazy. Trump loves the rally in Wildwood, New Jersey, where he can just throw anything he wants out.
It's because those people are the most effusive in their praise of him. You're right about those economic measures.
But he doesn't need it.
Well, but listen, it's not about need, it's about want, especially with this particular candidate.
That's right.
You have a feeling that Biden is acting only out of self-interest right now with what we see with Israel. Well, welcome to politics. Certainly his opponent is no better in that regard. But the problem for us as a country that you just outlined, it's too bad that all this noise and these trials are distracting us, because stuff like insurance rates is a really big problem in this country. And it's hitting top to bottom, left to right, across the map. And that whole industry is getting a break because politics is not focused on it.
Okay. A few weeks ago, I had an home insurance agent, visit me in the east end of Long Island, where you and I have domiciles. Mm-hmm. And the woman was very nice and walked around and had a little pad and was writing stuff down and looked at me and goes, well, you're going to have to sell your car to insure your house. Okay, and that was a joke, but it wasn't a joke. Okay? So I sold the car so I could have home insurance. Anyway.
I got dropped.
What I'm trying to tell the American public is...
I got dropped.
Well, I would have dropped you for...
I got dropped. I got dropped because there was too much. Yeah. There was too much exposure for me to litigation. I got dropped. I had to go hunt for more umbrella policy.
No, it wasn't that.
Go ahead.
I talked to your insurance agent, and you got dropped.
That explains
because they were afraid. They were afraid you would drop a barbell on your head and not be able to pay the premium. That's why they dropped you.
All right, I feel better about it.
Now, let's get back to Biden. So Israel, okay? Joe Biden doesn't know what's going on, okay? Jake Sullivan is running that policy. He is the national security advisor. Blinken is out of it. All Blinken does is get on the plane and off the plane. That's all he does. Sullivan calls the shots. So once the crescendo of the protests, the college protests, reached the left-wing media with the message that the Israeli government, Netanyahu, are war criminals, then Jake Sullivan started to panic. Mm-hmm. He said, we got to back away from this, mm-hmm. All right? So we got to tell Netanyahu and Israel, you better not do this, mm-hmm. and go to Rafah, you better not. We got a virtue signal. Well, as soon as he did that, Blinken did it on Sunday. Blinken was told to do it and did it. Okay. The internal polling at the White House, and they do that every day, mm-hmm. showed fury within the Democratic Party. Not the Bernie Sanders cadre. Mm-hmm. They love it. But the moderate Democrats were furious. Mm-hmm. So today, who pops out? There's Jake. Oh, we're going to give Israel $1 billion. It's 2 days later.
Yeah.
Does anybody understand the chaos with a capital C that is in the White House? This makes Jimmy Carter look like Franklin Roosevelt. This White House. It is every hour on the hour, panic, chaos. They don't know what to do. They stand for nothing. And the working class people are furious. And Stormy Cohen, I encapsulate both of them together for time, Stormy Cohen is not going to change that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with any of that. I think that is the state of play. It's just sad that these are the two choices for the American people, because the country could do so much better. Bill O'Reilly, I appreciate the analysis very much. You will
all right, one more thing. Are you feeling all right, Cuomo?
Better than I deserve.
Are you feeling better?
Better than I deserve.
All right. I'm going to send you another not woke mug that'll make you feel much better.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You're a very kind man. I'll see you soon, because my lawyer is going to have to contact you about what you did to me with the insurance. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Up next, more and more people are coming forward saying the COVID vaccine has not only made them sick, but the sickness has disabled them. This is not a story that's getting a lot of coverage, okay? Why? I'm going to tell you when we come back. I also have a nurse on who says you remember I had Sean on, his whole life had been changed by that? Okay. Now there's a 42-year-old teacher from Utah suing the drug company AstraZeneca. Remember, they're the ones that didn't do the mRNA. They did the monkey gene thing. She says the vaccine permanently disabled her, okay? She's going to come on and talk about why and what she's doing about it. When we come back, I'm going to tell you why you haven't heard more about this and why you still won't.
Lunatics are trying very hard to bring back COVID lockdowns and mandates with all of their sudden fear-mongering about the new variants that are coming. Gee whiz, you know what else is coming? An election. But to every COVID tyrant who wants to take away our freedom, hear these words: we will not comply.
Now, most in the media have not focused on this. They see it as a throwaway line to Crazy Town. Bill O'Reilly who is certainly fair-minded in his analysis of Trump, was like, you know what, I don't pay attention to that stuff. I know that it sounds like it's just stoking a fringe. I know most of us want to move on from the pandemic. I don't think we can, and here's why. There are too many questions about what happened during the pandemic to just move on. That's why we've been asking them here. You got to remember, I was off TV for a little while, so I didn't have a platform to do these things, but I do now. And if you discount the anti-vaxxers and people who believe lockdowns were tyranny, fine, but I think it's a mistake. I don't agree with all their assessments, but I think the conversation is the cure, not calling them crazy, and here's why. COVID isn't going anywhere. I'm not saying that we're going to have huge cases and hospitalizations like we did with the early virus, the original and the first one or two variants. I'm saying that the virus will still continue to affect the health of the young and the old in ways that we can see and can't see. And we have to deal with it. And you can't do that if you don't put it front and center and hold to account what has already come to pass. That's why you need to look at the reality that there are so many saying they were hurt by the vaccine. Doesn't mean that the vaccine was a scam or that, but you have to go through the process of analysis. There are too many saying that they were hurt. Side effects may occur. Yeah, I know, but how many and in what degree and at what point should we have known better? 42-year-old teacher and mom from Utah, Brianne Dressen, said she wanted to do her part for science when COVID broke out. That was the messaging. I often echoed it. It will help you not get sick. It will help you not get other people sick. So she volunteered in 2020 to take part in British-based AstraZeneca's clinical trial for their vaccine. Remember, she's not just like the rest of us who just did what she was told to do. She did it voluntarily to make sure others could. Now she's suing the drug manufacturer, first lawsuit of its kind in the United States, claiming she became permanently disabled after one shot of the vaccine. Dressen's lawsuit says she developed a severe neurological condition called post-vaccine neuropathy, leaving her with burning and painful stabbing sensations across her body. Also has cardiac issues, ringing in her ears, very similar symptoms to the guy we had on Sean, the nurse. Even though he didn't have this vaccine, he had one that's based on totally different technology. She says her life went from being the picture of health to a shadow of her former self. I want to bring in Brianne right now and her lawyer, Aaron Siri, because I have a question for him too. Brianne, I want people to understand what has happened to you and why you're doing this. Thank you for being with us. But customarily, I will ignore counsel as much as I can, but not this time. Aaron, I have a question. As a lawyer, is Brianne at all compromised in her ability to go after AstraZeneca because she volunteered for a clinical trial as opposed to just being someone like me or you who got it when it was made available to the public and we were told to take it?
No, I don't think that compromises her at all. I think she's subject to the same restrictions on bringing lawsuits for the most part that you, Chris, or anybody else that was injured from a COVID vaccine. And that's the PrEP Act. That's the federal government explicitly giving the vaccine manufacturers immunity for any injury that occurred from the COVID vaccine. And they didn't just do it, by the way, after the vaccine came out. They gave the immunity. They gave that immunity to them before they even developed the vaccine and did so contractually as well as doing so by law.
Right. Now, look, we know what that debate is going to be, and I think it's a good one to have, which is, well, they were asking us to rush it, says the companies. You know, ordinarily we would have taken longer, so we needed some type of protection. Let's put it to the side. Brianne, you look great. So explain to the audience, what are you actually dealing with, and how has life changed for you so much that you feel you need to litigate this?
Well, you know, the easiest way to explain this is that it's an invisible illness. I mean, we all look fine, right? We're not in a wheelchair. We still have hair. You know, we can still smile and communicate sometimes clearly. But the reality is I am in pain every second of every day. Unfortunately, I have a severe progressive neuropathy that will continue to progress until my life is done. It's something that is a very sharp tingling electrical sensation, and it courses through my body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But in addition to that, I have the tinnitus like Sean does. I have the food sensitivities. I'm completely dependent on other people. In my home, at the time, I had a 6 and an 8-year-old kid, and their lives, our lives revolved around them. Mom took care of everything for them. But now, unfortunately, everything revolves around mom. They have to figure out if mom can help them that day with their homework, if mom can make them breakfast, if mom's going to be able to get out of bed, is mom going to be able to take them to school? These are all very simple tasks that people take for granted. But when your health is robbed from you, those things are now things that you have to prioritize from one day to the next, depending on how your body is doing.
When you reported this set of events to the company, what was the response?
Silence. It's that simple. It was silence. I thought that they were going to be there to help me. In my contract, they stated explicitly that they will be there to help me financially as well as medically, and they didn't either. It's as if they couldn't get away from me fast enough after I reported my injury. I'm nothing more than a number to them, to be totally honest.
Well, it's hard to feel otherwise when they didn't reach out, right? What other message does it send? Well, look, let me give you a little dirty secret that I'm sure Aaron explained to you about litigation. Litigation is about time and who has the most time and who has the resources to extend time. What I can do here in the media is promise you I don't forget, okay? I don't forget. So until this ends, we're always a phone call away. I'm not saying that everything you say is right and everything that's wrong. I got to look at everything. But I will say this. I will follow the process to its conclusion. And AstraZeneca, you're going to get a suggestion to come on this show. And I want to understand why you wouldn't have even reached out to somebody who you'd made a deal with. Brianne, we are here for the duration. And I wish you the best with your family. Counsel, we're always a call away for any developments that you believe are instructive of the process. Okay?
Thank you for that. And I can assure you, we've got 40 folks here at the firm who pretty much only do vaccine work. We've got, I think, the largest vaccine practice in the world that doesn't represent pharmaceutical companies, and we're not letting this go.
Well, look, Brianne, you went to the right place. There's no question about that. I'm saying it takes time, and the media falls off. We're about the new in news. We don't forget here at NewsNation. We'll be a call away for the rest of the time. I promise you that. Take care. I'll talk to you soon. 3 minutes, 45 seconds. Now, to my point, by the way, this was an unintended segue. February 3rd, 2023, what happened? The people of East Palestine, Ohio, suffered that major train derailment, toxic burn-off, contaminated the water, so somebody who's not even close to a scientist could just kick at a rock in a creek and see that there was still a sheen after everyone was being told it's okay now. NewsNation stayed on the story because that is the job. We do the job for you. And guess what? There is a huge development. NewsNation has an exclusive with an EPA whistleblower who revealed what we feared most to our Rich McHugh. And this could change the lives in East Palestine and the ramifications from what has happened there to this time. Next. It's been more than a year, and East Palestine, Ohio is still ailing, but the truth is coming out. This situation, that train derailment, the toxic cloud and all that, was ignored, and for bad reason, by our government. We have been there. We have talked to the people. We have seen the cloudy water. We have smelled it. Rich McHugh has stayed. He has stayed on this and now has an exclusive with a whistleblower from the EPA who is starting to tell the story of what was known and what was avoided. Rich joins us now. Thank you very much for staying on this story. Tell me who you met. Tell me what it means.
I think this may be the most significant reporting yet, Chris. His name is Robert Krotel. This guy is a scientist. You couldn't really find a better whistleblower. He's been with the government for 40 years, first in DOD, Department of Defense, and then with the EPA. He created he helped create the Aspect plane and the systems around it. This is the plane that they put up in chemical disasters around this country to figure out what the chemicals are and what's the risk to the people. He says that this plane, the normal protocol is this plane launches within 1 to 5 hours and goes all around the country to these disasters. In this instance, it was 5 days. They waited 5 days before they brought it to East Palestine. And what's more, he said when this plane was up there, they told them to turn off the sensors as it was flying over the creek. So the chemical sensors that were there to collect the data were turned off. It's hard to believe.
Why?
Well, I think we have a soundbite from him. I want to play
it. Let's hear him explain
about these sensors.
Go ahead. Thanks, Rich. Go ahead.
The program manager informed the operators to turn the sensors off when we're flying up a couple of the creeks.
What possible reason could there be to turn the sensors off over the town of East Palestine when that's what you're there to do?
180 different responses. I've never heard the program manager tell us to turn the sensors off when collecting data.
So what do you think?
Now, this raises just so many questions. Number one, he says, look, if they had this data, they would not have had to do this controlled burn. He's really troubled by it. He says, like, this is why he resigned ultimately from there and is speaking out.
This is another piece in the puzzle that you and I have been talking about it, with your being at the lead, which is, was that controlled burn done because that's what the company wanted done, because that's what was best for the company to make it go away fastest for them? And this is something that's suggestive of that. What happens next?
Well, we've heard from Senator Sherrod Brown. He wrote us. He saw our story.
Yeah.
And he's responded. And we'll see where it goes. We hope that this leads to some sort of investigation.
Rich McHugh, you are the man. Thank you for staying on it. Thank you for helping the people of East Palestine.
Thanks, Chris.
We'll be right back.